So the Apple Studio Display, we all know it's expensive, but I decided to purchase the display myself to see what all the fuss is about. And after using it for 6 months, 5 to 6 days a week, I discovered 6.5 things that I find annoying, and maybe you should be aware of about the Studio Display. But for some reason, I still love using it. So the first and not so obvious thing is there are no physical buttons on the monitor at all, anywhere. From an appearance point of view, this is great. From a practical sense, not so great. Why? Well, you can't switch off the monitor when you're done for the day. The only way to do this is to unplug the Thunderbolt cable from the MacBook. But if you have a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, it's going to be pretty annoying to unplug the cable from the back each time. One possible solution, and you may not like this, is to purchase and use a remote control socket and have that connected to the studio monitor. And since there are no physical buttons, you can't control the brightness. It all has to be done on the Mac. So depending on which desktop space you have focus on, whether it's the MacBook or the display, the brightness buttons will only work based on where you have focus. This may be annoying depending on your situation. Now there is a pretty neat tool which sits on the menu bar, which is free, but you can upgrade to Pro, and that's called BetterDisplay. It allows you to quickly control the brightness setting from the menu bar. The other thing you should be aware of is, and this depends on your case, is the ports. It is an Apple product, so don't expect any other additional HDMI ports or display ports. Actually, they put the HDMI port back in the MacBook Pro. Anyway, you will only get 3 USB-C ports and 1 Thunderbolt port, which allows you to connect and charge your MacBook Pro in a single cable, which is fantastic. And having 3 USB-C ports is really useful. Now, if you're the sort of person that needs or wants to connect an additional device to the display, maybe you have a games console or a Raspberry Pi, it's not going to be straightforward with the Studio Display because you may need to purchase an additional adapter for them to work. And the camera, I'm in two minds. It's okay. I've used it during meetings, and yeah, it would have been nicer if the camera was higher quality. It has center stage, which follows you around, and it's fully compatible with Google Hangouts or Zoom. Just be sure to enable it in Control Center if you want to use it, and it works well. It's a neat feature. But in reality, in a meeting, yes, it's useful to have an embedded camera, but to have it follow you around, maybe in those situations where you're physically presenting something, then yeah, but in the majority of cases, probably not. And the other annoying thing, which you probably know about, is how the display comes in 2 forms, either the stand alone with a VESA mount or with the stand. And you can't really switch from one or the other. And the power cord is fixed as well. So if your cable is damaged for any reason, replacing it is not going to be easy. But then again, when was the last time you had to replace a monitor cable? And let's not forget the price. Doesn't matter which way you look at it, whether you get the display on its own or with a stand, prices start from $1,500 and can go as far as $2,200. And because of that alone, it'll put off a lot of people, including myself. Now, if you want to save a bit of money, check out the Apple Refurbished store. This is where I bought mine and saved almost $300. The refurbished store won't always have it in stock, and it's not obvious where to find them. You have to go to the accessories section of the site, and when they are in stock, you will see a display section. It can take a few months for them to appear, but if you're patient enough, they will show up. The other half annoyance is the bezels. It would have been nicer if the bezels was a bit thinner. Now, with all the annoyances and drawbacks, there is one major positive and probably the most important feature that the Apple Studio Display delivers on, and that's the display itself. The display is hands down fantastic. It's very bright, very vivid, very clean, very sharp. Working and reading text is very clear, no blurriness at all. And this might be me coming from an older monitor and onto this 5K display, but working with it every day is such a joy. It's one of those things you have to see for yourself. And if you are thinking of getting one, try to go to an Apple store, because seeing it is what won me over. Now, with the resolution screen, you can go up to 5K native, which is a bit ridiculous. The app I mentioned earlier, BetterDisplay, will allow you to have a more finer grained control resolution. And if you're wondering if the display is too reflective and whether you should go for the nano texture display, well, I sit by a window right there and it's south facing. So on those bright sunny days, the sun would flood the room and hit the monitor. And have I had any issues? No, not really. I think it's because the standard display glass is so bright, the reflection doesn't really come through. It's only a slight problem when you're working with apps that are in dark mode, then you may start to see a reflection of yourself. The other great thing about the Studio Display is the build quality and aesthetics. As with most Apple devices, the quality is superb. Even when it's switched off, it's aesthetically pleasing to look at. It looks like an iMac. The height and tilt adjustment is very easy to move and adjust, and it holds its fixed position very well. doesn't loosen or sag or anything. And the speakers, personally, I think they're pretty good monitor speakers. There are 6 speakers that support spatial audio and Dolby Atmos, and listening to music or watching videos, they're perfect. Especially if you don't have much space on your desk for external speakers and you want a minimal desk setup. The other thing is it just works, especially if you are in the Apple ecosystem. Every time I plug my MacBook Pro, the display turns on straight away. No drama. It works every time. Well, so far, touch wood. Now there is an alternative that you may have come across, and that's the Samsung Viewfinity S9, and that has been recently launched. And spec-wise, it's very similar to the Apple Studio Display. Some main differences is it's a matte display, it has 4K adjustable camera, and the appearance-wise, it looks very similar to the Apple Studio Display. Unfortunately, the price is also very similar. Prices start from $1,600. And that's the funny thing with the Apple Studio Display. It's expensive, yes, but it still delivers its primary function, which is the display. It's kind of like that expensive impulse buy, that overpriced pair of shoes or that bike or car. You know it's expensive, you know it's not 100% perfect, you know it has some flaws, but you still love it for what it is and what it delivers, and there isn't anything quite like it. Well, before you go, let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below, and see what YouTube suggests with any other videos you fancy.